Okay, grade eights. This is the start of a three-part video series on the Italian city-states and the beginning or the start of the Renaissance. And our guiding question is, what were the factors that shaped the Renaissance worldview? So part one, we'll talk about a brief introduction to the Renaissance. And we'll try to answer a question of what was the Renaissance? But first, some turtles. Do you know why we're showing you turtles? What could they possibly have to do with the Renaissance? What are their names? Does it make you think of anyone? Okay, I'll pause briefly here and see if you can even answer that. Okay, did you come up with Donatello, Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael? These are all famous painters of the Renaissance. And so, yes, the turtles were not chosen randomly. They were drawn from inspiration, okay? Artistic inspiration from painters of the Renaissance. What do you know about the Renaissance, okay? So the Renaissance is like going to be one of your big words of the unit. Well, especially chapter 2, which we're coming up to. Okay, so let's begin. From our 21st century viewpoint, we see the Renaissance as the era in which modern Western view, okay, so the Renaissance is an era when the modern Western worldview began to develop and take shape. So we're talking going on 600 years. The term Renaissance comes from the French word renaître, okay, I hope I said that right, renaître, to be born again or rebirth. Rebirth is the typical translation of Renaissance, okay? So when you think of Renaissance, I want you to think of rebirth. The Renaissance was a rebirth of ideas that were discovered when Europeans came into contact with forgotten, okay? That's the key, forgotten Greek and Roman ways of thinking and the ways of looking at the world. The ideas were being kept by Muslim and Jewish scholars. So again, this highlights the fact that during the Middle Ages, yeah, maybe parts of Europe were in that so-called Dark Ages, but other parts of the world were doing just fine, okay? We can't be too biased in thinking of the Dark Ages applies universally or globally. That's not true. So this is a picture of Michelangelo, who is a very, very famous painter and sculptor. His most famous paintings are of the Sistine Chapel, and his most famous sculpture is probably David. Okay, this is a picture of Michelangelo showing the pupil the Belvedere torso. Okay, you can see it's just sort of a half, it's obviously not intact. Only the torso really remains on the upper legs. It was created by an Athenian sculptor and was lost, okay, again, lost during the time of the fall of the Roman Empire. When the Roman Empire fell apart, a lot of the art and great achievements of the Roman Empire were forgotten about, or stuff like this was broken, and people just tended to not think about it much. And they tended to not think about it for centuries. When it was found, it influenced. You could even use the word inspired there, the artists during the Renaissance. Okay. The Renaissance is generally thought of a period of time, it's thought of as a period of time lasting from 1315 Common Era to 1600 Common Era. So in of itself, that's not a huge amount of time, but the Renaissance really gave birth to the other eras that followed it after, okay? There was the age of exploration, the age of scientific discovery, the age of enlightenment, okay? But the Renaissance is really what kick-started and got things going, okay? Just to review, that Common Era is the same as Anno Domini, AD, and BCE or BC, before Christ, or BCE is before Common Era, okay? So we're talking about like year 0, all right? This is after the birth of Christ by 1,350 years, okay? An era is simply an historical time period. All right. Okay, so I just thought I'd give you a snapshot of some timelines. Okay, again, it's right sort of through the middle of this picture. Year zero is right about there. So we're talking about 500 BC, or more properly called now 500 BCE, before Common Era. So really, you got to add that on to our current date of 2020. So that's 2,520 years ago. Okay, because year zero is right where the yellow line is. Now we're talking 500 AD or CE. So that's about 1,500 years. This is where you start to do subtraction. Okay, so we had the medieval period, okay, right there. That lasted for about 900 years. Then you have the Renaissance, okay? I love this table up here, okay? You can tell Mr. Smith is having fun with his highlighter. You've got the different timelines sort of broken down for you, okay? And I love the way this is colored, okay? I love the way this is colored. So you can see the Renaissance itself, not too long, but you can see it kind of bridges the gap there. Really important, okay? The Renaissance is a really important time era. Okay, so just to give you an overall view of where we're talking about in terms of the time. So the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, Black Death comes in at about 1350, okay? So about there, that's the Black Death. And it just blows a hole so wide and so big into feudal society and the hierarchy. It changes. You've planted the seed. That plague, that pandemic, was really the start of change. Okay. So how did the Renaissance begin? If you recall from our earlier lessons, during the Middle Ages, the vast majority of Europeans shared religious-based worldviews. Pardon me, religious-based worldviews. See, if you don't turn on the highlighter, then it fast forwards. This is really incredibly important, grade 8. It was based on the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church, which means you're talking about the Bible, the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's what gave us our new calendar, starting at year zero because of the life of Jesus Christ. So, quick review. The poor accepted they would suffer. The poor's, the people, the peasants, the serfs, their life sucked. There's just no other way of saying it during feudalism. They were at the bottom of the hierarchy. They would live short lives, but they would be rewarded in heaven. The rich would donate money and land to the church and be rewarded in heaven. Everyone's lives was dominated by religion and life centered by going to Mass, okay? By going to Mass. Just going to pause here. Okay. So how did the Renaissance begin? Well, because of contact with other cultures, through trade and war, the Crusades, there was an increased amount of knowledge and ideas being shared. And by the 1300s, change began happening more rapidly. And of course, I just spoke about it, the Black Death. I thought you would appreciate the visual of the Black Death sort of kind of blowing holes through the hierarchy there, the pyramid. I just want you to understand that the effect of Black Death was absolutely massive, okay? I mean, it changed everything. European societies began to reorganize and changes were coming thanks to the Black Death aftermath. The aftermath you can think of as a fallout. Like we're in a pandemic right now. What is the aftermath of being locked down and quarantine, isolation, businesses shutting down, theaters shutting down, everybody wearing masks, how we behave, all right? We're going to be talking about the aftermath for many years, even when our current COVID pandemic goes away or is beaten back. Scientists and university professors and people and cultures will be talking about the aftermath, the after effects for a very long time. Okay, so that's the end of part 1 out of a 3-part series. And the next series we'll talk a little bit about just generally about the Italian city-states. Okay? See you later.